In the shadowy mists of Norse myths and legends, where the cold northern seas crash against rugged shores, there existed the saga of the Vikings. Far more than mere warriors of legend, these Norsemen and women were weavers of a rich and intricate tapestry of culture, art, and exploration. As their longships cut through the waves like dark serpents under the endless sky, these formidable explorers, traders, and settlers embarked on voyages that would etch their names into the annals of history. In the lands we now call Scandinavia, life was forged in the crucible of a harsh and unforgiving environment. Here, in the realms of Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, the Vikings emerged not merely as plunderers and raiders, as often told in hushed and fearful tones, but as a people of profound depth and complexity. Existing from 800 AD to approximately 1050 AD, Vikings were skilled craftsmen, shrewd merchants, and tireless farmers, their hands as adept with the plow and loom as they were with sword and shield. Their world was one of rugged beauty, where ancient forests whispered secrets of the old gods, and the stars guided their paths across open seas. The Viking spirit was a flame that burned with the virtues of honor, courage, and a relentless pursuit of knowledge and discovery. In their sagas, sung by the flickering light of hearthfires, lay the heart of their culture, stories of heroes and heroines, of gods and monsters, of love and loss. As we embark on this journey through time, let us unravel the true essence of the Vikings. We will sail across the pages of history, exploring the myths and truths that surround these fierce people. From the fjords of their homeland to the distant shores they reached, their story was filled with adventure, innovation, and an enduring quest that reshaped the world. Welcome to the world of the Vikings, a world where every wave told a story, every wind whispered a legend, and every starlit night held the promise of new discoveries. The Vikings and their stories have been growing in popularity over the years. From TV shows to movies, video games, and art, these seafaring people managed to leave their mark on history, stirring imaginations for generations. However, like many depictions of historical events in media, creative liberty always finds its way in. With everything we hear about the Vikings, how much of it is true? How much of it is myth? Let's find out. There are many myths and false facts about the Vikings going around in these years, so here's a list of 15 popular Viking myths. Vikings wore helmets with horns. Chances are, if you've seen modern depictions of Vikings, then you've seen the helmets. This is probably the biggest myth of them all. According to research, there have been no records of Vikings having ever worn helmets with horns. All depictions of Viking helmets in the Viking Age show helmets with no horns, and the only authentic Viking helmets that have ever been found do not have them either. This is simply a creation that stuck around in later generations. So, where did this myth about the Viking horned helmets come from? While there is no definitive answer, an explanation could be that the Christians in Europe during the Viking Age added this detail to make the Vikings look even more like wild barbarians. The clash between Christianity and paganism around this time is something that can be discussed in length in another video, but it's possible that by adding the horns on their helmet, the Christians of that time attempted to associate the Vikings and paganism with the devil. It could also be something less nefarious. Depictions of the god Odin shows him wearing a helmet with wings on it. A minor mistake in interpretation may have confused the wings with horns, resulting in this widespread myth. A more minor explanation is that the horned Viking helmet myth was formed in the 1900s. An artist by the name of Gustav Malmström published his illustrations in the book Frithiof's Saga, which was a 14th century Icelandic saga. Or in the 1870s, when a man by the name of Richard Wagner staged his opera called Der Ring des Nibelungen, which was based loosely on Germanic and Norse legends. In this performance, the costume designer Carl Emil Doppler created horned Viking helmets for the characters. Being an incredibly popular opera, this could be the biggest reason why this myth exists in our modern day. The Vikings weren't crafty. Contrary to the common misconception of the Vikings as merely fierce warriors, they were, in fact, remarkable artisans and craftsmen. This era, often shrouded in tales of conquest and battle, also witnessed the flourishing of skills in shipbuilding, carpentry, jewelry making, and blacksmithing. In the realm of shipbuilding, the Vikings excelled beyond compare. Their ships were renowned as the finest during the Viking Age. They were not just modes of transportation, but masterpieces of design and functionality. Crafted with unparalleled precision and care, these longships were the heart of Viking exploratory and military prowess. Their ability to navigate both deep seas and shallow rivers allowed the Vikings to traverse vast distances rapidly, reaching lands far beyond their native shores. This craftiness extended to their work as jewelers. Across Scandinavia and former Viking settlements, archaeologists have uncovered stunning pieces of jewelry that showcase the Vikings' intricate workmanship. Among these is a remarkable thumb-sized Valkyrie figurine made of gilded silver found in Horby, Denmark. This exquisite piece, rich in detail, showcases the Vikings' deep connection with their mythology and their skill in metalworking. It's a dazzling reminder that beneath their rugged exterior, the Vikings were artisans of extraordinary talent. The Vikings were giants. The Vikings, often imagined as towering giants, were in reality closer in stature to modern humans than many assume. Archaeological findings have shed light on this aspect of their physicality, revealing a different picture. Men in the Viking Age, as determined by skeletal remains, averaged around 172 centimeters, about 5 feet 8 inches, in height, while women were typically around 160 centimeters, approximately 5 feet 3 inches. This stature, while slightly shorter than the average height in many populations today, dispels the myth of the Vikings as oversized warriors. Their physical build, robust and well-suited to the harsh climates and demanding lifestyles of their era, was a product of their environment and way of life. They were a people shaped by the rugged landscapes and challenging seas, their bodies honed not just for battle, but for survival in a world where strength and resilience were paramount. These revelations about their size offer a more nuanced understanding of the Vikings. They were not just the mythical giants of legend, but real, tangible people whose lives and legacies were as grounded in reality as they were steeped in the extraordinary. They were all blonde. The common image of the Vikings as a sea of blonde warriors is a dramatic oversimplification of their genetic diversity. Recent genetic studies have painted a more colorful picture of Viking hair colors, particularly distinguishing between different regions. In the windswept landscapes of West Scandinavia, including Denmark, red hair was surprisingly prevalent among the Vikings. This fiery hue, often associated with passion and fierceness, mirrored the spirited and bold nature of these Norsemen. The red-haired Viking, standing under the Nordic sky, becomes an emblem of the distinctiveness and diversity within Viking communities, so much so that Thor, the Norse god of thunder, is often described as having red hair, depending on the source. Contrastingly, in northeastern Scandinavia, around the area of modern Stockholm, blonde hair was indeed the dominant trait. These blonde Vikings, sailing from their frost-laden homelands, became the iconic image associated with Viking raiders and explorers. This genetic variance highlights the diversity of the Viking population, a society not homogeneous in appearance but rich in its variety. Women went on raids. The saga of Viking women challenges the traditional narrative of the Viking Age as a male-dominated era. While it's true that most warriors on Viking raids were men, the existence of shield maidens, or skjaldmær in Old Norse, adds a layer of complexity to our understanding of Viking society. Shield maidens, though a small fraction of the forces, were formidable warriors in their own right. Their presence on the battlefield, although not the norm, speaks to the diverse roles women could occupy in Viking society. While not necessarily a complete myth, Viking women did not participate in raids as commonly as modern media would like you to believe. The reality for the majority of Viking women was a life centered around the home and farm. In a world where men often embarked on long voyages of raiding or trade, women were the steadfast backbone of the household. Their responsibilities went far beyond domestic chores. They were integral to the farm's operations, managing the harvest and thereby ensuring the survival of their family. This dual image of Viking women, as both fierce warriors and diligent custodians of home life, paints a picture of a society where women were respected for their strength and resilience in various roles. Their contributions, both in battle and on the farm, were vital to the survival and prosperity of Viking communities, highlighting their indispensable role in the tapestry of Viking life. Women had no rights. In Viking society, women emerged not as silent figures in the background, but as individuals endowed with rights and freedoms that were remarkably progressive for their time. These women of the North navigated a world where their voices and choices held weight and consequence, a stark contrast to the often restrictive norms of the era. The sagas and chronicles of the Viking Age paint a vivid picture of women who wielded considerable independence. They had the right to divorce, a power almost unheard of in many contemporary societies. This right was not just symbolic. It was a practical tool, especially in cases where a husband became violent or failed in his duties. Moreover, Viking women had the freedom to remarry, to weave new chapters in their lives, unfettered by societal stigma. Beyond the realms of marriage and family, Viking women could amass wealth and power. The Oseberg burial site in Norway stands as a testament to this. Here lay the remains of a woman, possibly a noble or even a queen, surrounded by riches and artifacts of great value. This burial, one of the most magnificent ever discovered, underscores the potential stature and influence women could achieve in Viking society. Far from being mere bystanders, they were active participants, capable of rising to ranks of power and prestige. They were called Vikings. The term Viking conjures images of fearsome warriors setting sail to unknown lands, but it was more than just an identity. It was an action, a venture into the unknown. However, this was not always what they were called. During the time of the Vikings, they were more commonly referred to as Danes, Normanni, Osman, or Norsemen. To go Viking was to embark on a journey, often fraught with danger but brimming with the promise of glory and wealth. It was only later on, after their series of raids and escapades, were the Norsemen collectively called Vikings. In Viking society, while many remained in their villages, tending to farms and local affairs, there were those driven by an insatiable thirst for adventure and conquest. These individuals would set out on raids that could span months or even years, traversing treacherous seas and hostile lands. The risks were great, but so were the potential rewards. Successful raids brought not just material wealth, but also fame and honor, elevating the status of these individuals within their communities. The Viking raids were more than mere military expeditions. They were voyages of discovery and exploration. These journeys shaped the Viking identity, creating a legacy of boldness and exploration that continues to captivate the imagination. The Vikings, through their daring raids, left an indelible mark on history, not just as warriors, but as adventurers who pushed the boundaries of their known world. The Vikings were dirty and smelled bad. Dismantling the myth of the unkempt Viking, history reveals a people who were surprisingly meticulous about their cleanliness. Far from the image of the grimy, odorous warrior, the Vikings were in fact quite fastidious about their personal hygiene. In the heart of their society was an established tradition of bathing, so ingrained that it shaped their calendar. The Old Nordic word for Saturday, laugardagur, directly translates to washing day, a testament to the regularity and importance of bathing in Viking culture. This tradition, though evolved in modern Scandinavian languages, persists in Icelandic, where laug still means bath or pool and dagur means day. The Vikings' attention to cleanliness extended beyond regular bathing. They possessed personal hygiene kits, a luxury in the medieval world, which might include items like ear spoons, combs, and razors. These tools were not just functional, they were often beautifully crafted, reflecting the Vikings' appreciation for aesthetics in everyday life. This care for personal grooming challenges the stereotypical image of the Viking and offers a glimpse into a society that valued cleanliness and personal presentation. Vikings drank from skulls. One of the most macabre and enduring myths about the Vikings is that they drank from the skulls of their slain enemies. However, this grisly image is a result of a historical mistranslation that has spiraled into legend. The origin of this myth can be traced back to the 17th century work Runer Pseudanica Literatura Antiquissima by Ole Worm. In this text, Worm described the Danes drinking from the curved branches of skulls, referring, in fact, to horns. However, when translated into Latin, the phrase became ex cranis eorum quos cecidunt, from the skulls of those whom they had slain. This translation error, converting horns to human skulls, sparked a sensational and enduring image of the Vikings. It fit neatly into the narrative of the savage and barbaric Norsemen, a narrative that was eagerly adopted and perpetuated over the centuries. In reality, the Vikings, like many other cultures of the time, drank from horns, a far cry from the morbid tableau of drinking from the skulls of enemies. This myth, though vivid and dramatic, is a stark reminder of how translation errors can shape and distort our understanding of history. The axe was the Vikings' preferred weapon. Venturing into the heart of a Viking battle, one might expect to see a sea of axes wielded by these fierce Norse warriors. However, historical excavations paint a different picture of the Viking armory. The most commonly unearthed weapon from Viking sites is not the axe but the spear. This long, versatile weapon was the mainstay of the Viking warrior, a symbol of their tactical acumen on the battlefield. In addition to spears, the Vikings were proficient with a range of other weapons. Knives, swords, round shields, bows, and arrows all played vital roles in their combat arsenal. Each weapon served a purpose, from the sword's deadly precision in close combat to the bow's lethal reach on the battlefield. The diversity of these weapons reflects the adaptability and tactical diversity of the Vikings in warfare, challenging the narrow portrayal of them as mere axe-wielding barbarians. Vikings used primitive weapons. Dispelling the myth of the Vikings as primitive weapon users, their forges and smithies were, in fact, hubs of advanced metallurgical innovation. Viking weaponsmiths employed a technique known as pattern welding, a sophisticated process that produced swords of exceptional quality. Pattern welding involved the forging of different types of iron and steel together, creating a weapon that was not only razor-sharp, but also remarkably flexible. This technique was a testament to the Vikings' deep understanding of metallurgy and their skill in weapon making. Their swords, far from being crude implements of war, were masterpieces of design and engineering, combining lethal efficacy with artistic beauty. Among these, the Ulfberht sword stands as a pinnacle of Viking craftsmanship. This rare and exceptional weapon, marked with the inscription Ulfberht, was so advanced in its construction that modern attempts to replicate it using traditional methods have met with limited success. The quality of the steel and the skill required to make an Ulfberht sword suggest a level of technological sophistication that was centuries ahead of its time. The existence of such a weapon shatters any notion of the Vikings as primitive weapon makers and places them instead at the forefront of medieval arms technology. Vikings only lived in Scandinavia. Embarking on a journey through the annals of history, you will find that the Vikings, a people synonymous with Scandinavia, extended their reach far beyond the fjords and forests of their native lands. Initially hailing from what we now know as Denmark, Norway, and Sweden, these intrepid explorers were driven by a combination of necessity and ambition to traverse distant horizons. Confronted with the challenges of limited fertile land and a burgeoning population, the Vikings set their sights on distant shores. Their long ships, marvels of naval engineering, bore them across treacherous seas to the farthest reaches of the known world. From the misty shores of England and France to the sunlit coasts of the Mediterranean. They established settlements, trading posts, and even kingdoms. But the Viking journey did not halt at the borders of Europe. They ventured as far as Newfoundland in North America, centuries before Columbus set sail. This extraordinary feat of navigation and courage further dispels the myth of the Vikings as mere raiders, showcasing them as skilled explorers and settlers. The Viking footprint on the world is a testament to their adaptability, resilience, and unquenchable thirst for exploration. The Vikings were a nation. Dive deeper into the social fabric of the Viking era, and a complex picture emerges, far from the concept of a unified Viking nation. The Vikings were a mosaic of tribes and groups, each led by their own chieftain, each with its unique customs, laws, and ambitions. The lands we now call Norway, Denmark, and Sweden were a patchwork of these smaller kingdoms, each fiercely independent and often in competition with one another. It wasn't until the twilight of the Viking Age that these regions began to coalesce into the nation-states we recognize today. However, when it came to raids and overseas expeditions, these diverse groups occasionally united under powerful leaders. These alliances, often temporary, were formed to achieve common goals, such as large-scale raids or conquests in foreign lands. This dynamic structure of Viking society, fluid and adaptable, allowed them to respond swiftly to opportunities and challenges alike. It fostered a culture where leadership was earned through prowess and wisdom, not merely inherited by birth. In this world of many tribes and chieftains, the Viking Age flourished, leaving a legacy of a people not bound by a singular identity, but rather defined by their diversity and collective spirit of adventure. Vikings were barbarians. Venture into the realm of Viking history, and you encounter a narrative often clouded by the image of bloodthirsty barbarians, a stereotype perpetuated by countless books and movies. Yet, the truth of the Viking era is far more nuanced and complex than this one-dimensional portrayal. The Viking raids, marked by violence and destruction, were indeed fearsome. However, it's crucial to contextualize this within the broader landscape of the age, a period steeped in violence across various cultures. Consider the reign of Charlemagne, the king of the Franks, contemporaneous with the Viking Age. His order for the execution of 4,500 Saxons at Verdun is a stark reminder that brutality was not the sole domain of the Vikings. The Vikings' infamous attacks on Christian monasteries and holy sites, often accompanied by the killing of monks, certainly fueled their fearsome reputation. This deliberate targeting of religious symbols likely served a strategic purpose, undermining the spiritual and moral authority of their enemies. Their reputation for ruthlessness became a weapon in itself, often causing adversaries to flee rather than confront them. Yet to label the Vikings as mere barbarians is to overlook the complexity of their society and their contributions beyond warfare. Vikings only pillaged and murdered. Peeling back the layers of Viking history, a different picture emerges, one where the majority were not warriors but farmers, traders, craftsmen, and merchants. The Viking society was predominantly agrarian, with a deep connection to the land and the sea. Those who did embark on raids represented only a fraction of the Viking population. Their motivations extended beyond their search for women and silver. Many sought new lands for settlement, not just in Europe, but in distant, uncharted territories like Iceland and Greenland. These settlements often evolved from violent beginnings to more peaceful cohabitation and integration with local populations. Trade was another cornerstone of Viking life. Their expansive trade networks stretched from the coasts of North America to the bazaars of the Middle East. The Vikings were not just raiders but also savvy traders, exchanging goods and cultures with a diverse range of peoples. Their exploratory ventures were driven by more than just the pursuit of wealth. The discovery of America by the Vikings, 500 years before Columbus, is a testament to their adventurous spirit and curiosity. This aspect of Viking life, often overshadowed by tales of raids and conquest, paints a portrait of a people who were as much explorers and traders as they were warriors. In conclusion, the Vikings, often enshrined in modern culture as fierce, horn-helmeted warriors of the seas, were in reality a far more multifaceted and dynamic people. Their story, woven into the fabric of history, is rich with nuances that challenge and enrich our understanding of who they were. From their unexpected cleanliness and sophisticated craftsmanship to their exploratory spirit and complex societal structures, the Vikings defy the simplistic labels often assigned to them. Their legacy, marked by both ferocity in battle and a profound capacity for trade, exploration, and settlement, illustrates a society that was as versatile as it was bold. The Vikings were not a monolithic group, but a group of tribes and individuals, each contributing to the rich mosaic of their culture in unique ways. They were farmers, traders, artisans, and explorers, as much as they were warriors.